playing and you think, oh, God, James Bond's going to die. He's going to die. But then at the last minute...
He pulls a ripcord, right? And a parachute comes out and it's got a Union Jack on it.
Michael!
So, growing up, watching James Bond, for me, Bond never really resonated. I always saw him as a caricature, like an iconic stereotype, almost from a comic book. I think he might actually be from a book, but I could never really relate to Bond. I wanted to be a spy so fucking bad, but I never really looked at any of the Bonds as an example that I could look to. Until I saw Daniel Craig. Someone I could actually feel something for. Someone who wasn't just about cheesy one-liners or running around in the blazing desert in this bloody suit and a little tiny gun. Look at this little gun.
I've never killed a midget before, but there can always be a first time.
The whole idea of swooping in to get the girl. She falls in love with him within an hour or two. I mean, come on. They were all really good-looking, suave guys. And even though I can relate, not many other guys can. There's a lot of fans out there still loyal to the OG Sean Connery, the real man who started it all. Roger has his fans too for being that suave gentleman with all his one-liners.
A woman?
Bond. James Bond.
Most millennials might say Brosnan for having that perfect mix of both. That polished charm and great hair.
Who are you?
Bond. James Bond.
And then there was Dalton, the only Welsh Bond ever.
He didn't say the name's Bond. Jones the Bond. 007.
But Daniel isn't just about a martini and a smirk. Daniel's different immediately. He leads with this blunt, grounded masculinity. His presence on screen is impossible to ignore. He walks into a room like a threat. Not a gentleman spy, but a weapon with a heartbeat. It's pretty good. He brought 007 to modern day with real grit and realism that Bond badly needed. He's confident, direct, and dangerous. The kind of man who really would be assigned as 007 because he does what other people can't. This Bond is one who doesn't take any shit. He's not a cheesy gentleman of Her Majesty's Secret Service. He's a no-holds-barred fighter who will do anything to win. From the opening act, this film shows you exactly who this Bond is. The brutal foot chase crashing through drywall. He's unpolished. He's human. What a man. And he doesn't survive things by smiling charmingly at danger. He survives because he's a bit ruthless. He survives because he's relentless, never backing down. Because he's willing to be ruthless in the ways that other people couldn't stomach. He survives because he is at his core a predator that the British government point to when there's a monster threatening the world. He rips apart the bathroom, stumbling, snarling, fighting absolutely feral in his determination. And this is the Bond that feels real. A man who is 2 steps ahead, not because of luck or film plot, but because he's built to endure the absolute worst the world has to offer. I think I've made my point. Hey, you know what's crazy growing up? And I'm just assuming that you're all just like me, but the only time I ever saw James Bond was on bank holidays on ITV. And it was always ITV, and I remember that because of the constant adverts. It was good old, cheesy, campy, family entertainment.
Who's
your... I'll call you around 9.
Sweet dream.
And there was a time when Bond sort of disappeared, sort of dropped off a bit. But then, after a long break, in 2005, the unveiling of the new James Bond was unveiled. And when Daniel was coming in on that boat, it was a huge publicity moment. And I was like, yeah, he looks... Actually, my first thought was, hey, it's that guy from Lara Croft. Nice. And he got slammed in the press for being too short or too ugly. Not ugly, but, you know, just not like classically good looking or suave. And anyway, he got slammed. But then when the newspapers released these pictures, suddenly Well, suddenly people were interested in seeing what exactly this guy has to offer. For some reason. And why the movie is so special is that it gives us something we've never seen before. We see the softer side of Bond. And it's soft. Because he starts off so aggressive, and the film shows this contrast between beginning Bond, all primal and wild, to someone who's able to show vulnerability without any tears or emotional outbursts. We get to see this tough exterior melt away, and we see James Bond fall in love. And he doesn't have to say it. We see it.
I wonder if that's why I love you.
Okay, he does say it, but we see his pain and heartbreak, and we see his conflicted emotions about being betrayed. A man who's so dedicated to being that guy, always out in the field, country first, always in control. To someone willing to give it all up for this. For this! Unbelievable. Anyway, Bond meets Vesper on the train, and immediately he's challenged emotionally.
I'm the money.
Every penny of it.
Unbelievable.
Now, I'd have normally gone with only child, but, you see, by the way you ignored the quip about your parents, I'm gonna have to go with orphan.
Gotcha, bitch!
She has the same sharpness and same confidence as Bond. She matches his wit and psychological jabs.
That's the chip on your shoulder. And since your first thought about me ran to orphan, that's what I'd say you are.
Gotcha, bitch!
And for the first time, he sees someone that he can't quite figure out. Someone he can't seduce so easily.
You are, Mr. Bond. I will be keeping my eye on our government's money and off your perfectly formed house.
You noticed.
Even accountants have imagination.
And this is where we see the first crack in James Bond's armor. The stairwell fight. A brutal, chaotic struggle where Bond has to fight for his life and also protect Vesper. It's not stylishly, it's not clean, it's not the glossy spy action that we're used to. It's done in the most brutal, violent way because he has to. The training kicks in, and we see what most people don't get to see. Do you think M gets to see how he makes his kills? Hell no. She's drinking tea, watching telly at home. Some dude. They send James to do the job. They don't know how messy it'll be, but this is part of who he is. He's a killer, an agent hired by the country simply because he can do what most people can't. The next scene. Bond finds Vesper in the shower, fully clothed, in shock. She's processing a kind of violence she's never been exposed to. He sits next to Vesper, and this time there's no charm, no bravado, just his presence, human presence. And this is where we first see a gentler Bond. This is the next crack in his armor. I forgot to mention as well, you got to keep track of the cracks, they're kind of important. I probably should have mentioned it earlier, sorry, my bad. This is where he falls in love. It's not at the poker game, not on the yacht, where you would normally expect to fall in love because yachts are cool. But this is the moment where he falls in love. In this tiny moment, he lets himself stop being a weapon and allows himself to be just a man. And it's beautiful. Next scene. Bond is tied naked to the chair. That's not a crack you have to make a note of, okay? That's a separate crack. We see the most vulnerable version of his character. There's no suit, no gadgets, no bravado, no armor. Obviously, because he's naked. But what I mean is, there's no charm to hide behind, just pain and humiliation. Le Chiffre isn't just torturing his body, he's dismantling Bond, piece by piece. Piece. There's gotta be a joke here somewhere. His piece. Then we hear Vesper scream, and he looks up, and it's just silent dread, his weakness. He knows what it means, and with every laugh he forces out, every sarcastic jape, that's Bond's training kicking in. Because he knows Vesper's the only thing that matters. James knows that this is the only leverage they have against him, but 007 also knows what leverage he has, and that is that he's willing to be tortured to death, and he ain't giving them shit. Daniel Craig plays the scene perfect. There's realism because we see his panic, his concern, his fear, but we also see the kind of man that he is and why he's 007. If this was a more serious movie, if this wasn't a James Bond movie, it would actually be quite a scary scene. Especially if you're a dude.
God! It burns!
And this is the closest we ever get to seeing Bond completely powerless, completely human, willing to sacrifice himself. And that is a real-life superhero. Next scene, we get to celebrate and enjoy a well-deserved victory. This version of James Bond really does deserve to be happy after everything he's been through and everything we've learned about him. Bond writing his resignation, believing that he could leave that life behind, to believe in that possibility, to imagine peace for the first time in his entire existence.
You do what I do for too long, and there won't be any soul left to salvage. I'm leaving with what little I have left. Is that enough for you?
But wait! There's more!
The next scene. Bond frantically running, chasing after Vesper, while everything else crashes down around him. I guess we saw it coming. I mean, it was never going to be a happy ending. Bond chases after her, not just as 007, he's half 007, half James Bond. He dives underwater without question. It's frantic, desperate. It's not the cool, calm, composed operative that we're used to, but a man drowning. He reaches for her with this frantic desperation, like he's fighting the entire world to pull her back. And then we get to see the flicker of a heartbeat as she slips away from him, a glimpse of the man he could have become. You know, she wasn't so bad. Now 007 kicks in, adrenaline pumping. He kicks open the door and pulls Vesper to the surface. Adrenaline still pumping. We see the flood of emotions flicker in his face. Anger, confusion, and rage. And then heartbreak. The final crack in his armor. You don't have to keep track of his cracks anymore, okay? That's the final crack. Then his breathing stabilizes, he becomes more precise. All the emotions shut behind a wall. By the time he says the lines,
If you do need time.
Why should I need more time? Job's done. The bitch is dead.
he isn't speaking to M, he's speaking to himself. Trying to kill that part of himself that loved her, because it hurts too much to keep it alive. And this is the moment that James Bond dies and 007 is born. It's actually a good title for this video. In the final scene, we see him return, fully formed, fully armoured. He isn't the man on the train anymore, he isn't the man in the shower. No more cracks. Now he's something new, something harder, more precise, more dangerous. And when he says the famous lines, the name's Bond, actually you say it.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
Now when he says it, it's not a catchphrase. It's a eulogy, a declaration. Casino Royale didn't just give a reboot of James Bond, it created him. It shows us the man behind the legend and the pain that forced the legend into existence.
Yeah, so, do you want to hear some more?